There is a class of people forming right now, today, as you watch this, who are going to own the next 20 years of human civilization. They're not hedge fund managers. They're not politicians. They're not even the tech billionaires you've been reading about for the last decade. They are something entirely new. Something we don't have a clean word for yet. I'm going to call them the Cyberelite. And the terrifying thing, some of them are 23 years old, working from a laptop, and they are already outperforming entire departments of 50 people. Let's back up for a second, because I want you to really feel the weight of what's happening here. For the last 200 years, since the Industrial Revolution rewrote the rules of human labor, your economic value was tied to one thing: specialization. You learned a skill. You got good at that skill. You sold that skill to someone with capital. That was the deal. That was the entire deal for 2 centuries. And it worked. Sort of. It built the middle class. It built the suburbs. It built the idea that if you showed up and did your job competently, you would be okay. That deal is dead. Not dying. Not on life support. Dead. And in its place, something far more interesting and far more unequal is emerging. We are watching, in real time, the birth of a worker class that doesn't play by those rules at all. A class that doesn't specialize. It synthesizes. A class that doesn't compete with AI. It wields AI like a weapon. This is the Cyberelite. And if you're not paying attention, you are already falling behind. So who exactly are we talking about? The Cyberelite are not necessarily the most educated people in the room. That's the first thing that should shock you. They're not always the ones with the Ivy League degrees or the 15 years of domain expertise. In fact, some of the most powerful members of this emerging class are people who, 5 years ago, would have been considered underqualified for the jobs they're now completely dominating. What they have instead is something far harder to teach in a classroom: epistemic agility. The ability to move fluidly between domains, to ask the right questions, to direct intelligence, artificial intelligence, like a conductor leads an orchestra. Think about what that means for a second. A single Cyberelite operator can wake up on a Monday morning and draft a fully researched market analysis. By noon, they've generated the first 3 chapters of a business proposal, complete with financial modeling. By 3 p.m., they've prototyped a web application. By end of day, they've written, edited, and scheduled a month's worth of content. One person. One day. That used to require an analyst, a consultant, a developer, a writer, and a project manager. 5 salaries. 5 desks. 5 people in a conference room arguing about fonts. Now it's 1 person, a few well-crafted prompts, and an espresso. This isn't an exaggeration. This is a Tuesday for the people I'm describing. Here's the philosophical heart of what's happening. And I want you to sit with this because it's genuinely profound. Throughout human history, leverage, the ability to make your effort multiply, has always been gated by capital. You wanted to scale your impact? You needed money. You needed infrastructure. You needed to hire people. Leverage was expensive. AI has decoupled leverage from capital for the first time in history. Read that again. Let it land. You no longer need $1 million to have the operational capacity of a small company. You need taste. You need judgment. You need the ability to articulate what you want and recognize when it's been done well. You need what I'd call intellectual sovereignty. A strong enough sense of your own goals that you can direct a system of near infinite capability toward them. The Cyberelite are people who have that. And because they have it, their leverage is essentially uncapped. This is why you're seeing solo operators building businesses that hit 7 figures in revenue. This is why you're seeing individual consultants replace teams. This is why a single sharp analyst with the right AI stack is making Goldman Sachs nervous. The leverage revolution isn't coming. It arrived. Most people just didn't notice. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and where most conversations about AI stop way too early. Everyone talks about learning AI tools. Use ChatGPT, use Claude, use whatever the new hot thing is. And look, yes, tool familiarity matters. But that's not what separates the Cyberelite from everyone else. What separates them is a three-layer skill stack that very few people are talking about. Layer 1. Domain credibility. The Cyberelite are not generalists floating in the void. They have at least one domain, one field, where they understand the real problems, the real stakes, the real nuances. Because if you don't know enough to evaluate the AI's output, you're not wielding AI. You're just laundering AI. And people will figure that out fast. Layer 2. Systems thinking. The ability to see not just tasks, but workflows. Not just problems, but architectures. The Cyberelite don't just use AI to answer individual questions. They build entire AI-augmented systems that run with minimal human intervention. They think in pipelines. They think in loops. They think about what connects to what. Layer 3. Communication as power. And this is the one nobody talks about enough. In a world where AI can generate almost anything, the scarcest resource becomes taste and voice. The ability to communicate with precision, persuasion, and personality. The ability to take the raw output of a machine and elevate it into something that feels human, something that moves people. The Cyberelite write well. They speak well. They know the difference between information and narrative. Without all three layers, you're not Cyberelite. You're just a fast typist with a subscription. Now, I'd be lying to you. And I'd be doing a disservice to the seriousness of this topic if I didn't flip this coin over and look at the other side. Because the rise of the Cyberelite is not just an inspiring story about human ingenuity. It is also the story of the most dramatic restructuring of the labor market since the invention of the assembly line. And the restructuring means winners. And it means losers. The workers who are not developing these capabilities, who are waiting for their company to train them, who are treating AI as a curiosity rather than an urgent existential priority, are going to find themselves in an incredibly precarious position. Not in 20 years. In 5. Maybe 3. We are already seeing it. Entire categories of white-collar work. The kind of work that was supposed to be safe because it required a degree, because it required expertise, because it required years of experience, are being compressed, automated, or simply handed to a Cyberelite operator who can do it better, faster, and cheaper. The philosophical question this raises is one that no government, no institution, no think tank has a satisfying answer to yet. What is the social contract in a world where human labor is fundamentally optional for a growing number of tasks? I don't have that answer. Anyone who claims they do is selling you something. But here's what I believe. The worst thing you can do right now is pretend the question isn't being asked. Let me push the philosophy even further, because this is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. There's a historical pattern that every major technological revolution follows. First, the technology democratizes. Everyone gets access. The playing field levels. People celebrate. Then, quietly, invisibly, mastery stratifies. It happened with the printing press. Everyone could read. But the people who could write, persuade, and publish wielded enormous power. It happened with the internet. Everyone had a website. But the people who understood search, distribution, and algorithms built empires. Now it's happening with AI. Everyone has access to the same base tools. But the Cyberelite, the people who can truly use them, are pulling so far ahead so fast that the gap is starting to look less like a skills gap and more like a class gap. I'll say the quiet part loud. We may be watching the emergence of a new kind of aristocracy. Not one based on bloodline, not one based on inherited wealth, but one based on cognitive leverage, the ability to think clearly, direct powerfully, and build systematically in an AI-native world. And here's the really thorny part. This aristocracy will genuinely believe it earned its position. Because in many ways, it did. And that is going to make it extraordinarily difficult to challenge. Politically or culturally. The kings of the industrial age inherited factories. The lords of the cognitive age will have built theirs. One prompt at a time. So what do you do with all of this? First, don't panic. Panic is useless. And the people watching this video, people who are actively thinking about these questions, are already ahead of the curve by definition. Second, understand that the door to the Cyberelite is not closed. It is not a secret society. It doesn't require a specific degree or a specific background. What it requires is a decision, a genuine, committed decision, to take AI seriously as a force multiplier for your particular skills and domain. The path looks something like this. Pick the one domain where you already have credibility, where you already know the real problems. And then ask yourself, what would it look like if I could do this at 10x capacity? What workflows would I build? What decisions would I be able to make faster? What output would I be able to generate? Then go build it. Iterate. Break it. Rebuild it. The Cyberelite are not people who read about AI. They are people who use it, obsessively, relentlessly, every single day. The gap between knowing about AI and knowing how to wield AI is enormous. And it widens every week. I want to close with something that I think about a lot. Maybe more than I should. Every major civilizational shift has had a story it tells itself about why it's good. The Industrial Revolution told itself it was lifting people out of agrarian poverty. The Information Age told itself it was democratizing knowledge. And those stories weren't entirely wrong. But they also weren't entirely honest about the costs, the disruptions, and the people who got left behind. The AI age is telling itself a story right now too. The story is about abundance, about unlocking human potential, about a future where the boring, the tedious, the soul-crushing parts of work just disappear. And honestly, I want to believe that story. Parts of it are real. But the Cyberelite phenomenon forces us to ask harder questions. Not just, can I use AI to do more? But what world am I building when I do? What happens to the analyst whose job I just replaced with a pipeline? What happens to the writer whose content I just generated in 30 seconds? What happens to the programmer whose code I just shipped without them? These aren't hypotheticals. These are people. And they're going to need answers that go beyond learn to use the tools. The Cyberelite have an enormous amount of power right now. And what they choose to do with it, whether they build systems that hoard opportunity or systems that distribute it, is one of the defining questions of the next decade. You are watching history happen. The only question left, and I mean this sincerely, is which side of it you end up on. The Cyberelite are not a myth. They're not a future possibility. They are here, they are growing, and they are reshaping what it means to work, to create, and to compete. If this video made you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is attention, and attention is the first step. If you want to go deeper on any of this, the skill stacks, the tools, the workflows, the philosophy, I'm going to be covering all of it on this channel. Subscribe if you haven't, and drop in the comments. Do you know someone who fits the Cyberelite profile? Are you trying to become one? Because that conversation, that's the most important one we're not having loudly enough.